Lingley of Brilliant Labs.
Well, thank you. Sorry, teacher voice. My wife's also a teacher. We taught, much to her dismay, across the hallway from each other, and she's like, please don't wear your microphone today. I also am a big fan of karaoke. Thank you very much, Dale, and a huge hand for the Maker Faire Educator Forum organizing committee. This is absolutely incredible. A huge hand, thank you. I'm a little starstruck to just go on after Ted Dintersmith. I mean, you know, only at Maker Faire can the geeks among educators see all of their pedagogical marvels come together. Oh, you may get to hear some karaoke. So, I'm an educator, I'm a teacher, I'm a mathematics teacher. I spent 6 years in the classroom in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, and very pleased to have 55 teachers, as Dale mentioned, be partners with Brilliant Labs. 4 years ago, I left the classroom kicking and squeaking, I'm not sure what that is, but kicking and screaming, and because I love teaching math. I love taking students' impression for mathematics and really turning it upside down, throwing that textbook into the corner where it should be, and allowing them to convey their own knowledge in a way that's meaningful to them, and using a subject area matter that is so distant to many students. How are we doing? One. So, Brilliant Labs is a not-for-profit educational organization. Do I have dongle?
Your dongle.
Dongle, yeah, it's right back there. I had a dongle dilemma earlier this week too. I'm going to start flipping through the slides on this screen. Alliteration, teachers, dongle dilemma. Recently we've spread across Atlantic Canada, and we've been working with students and teachers in a way, as Dale mentioned, is renewing a sense of ownership, empowerment, and thrill to be a part of a movement. And, you know, when you look at culture in a dictionary, which I used the Googles for yesterday, it talks about creating a collective, a community. And what we sometimes fail to see in connection with education and technological movements within our discipline of education is that some initiatives throw technology to fix a problem, to maybe stimulate students to become a part of this technological revolution, which has its place and has its role. But in doing so, lends that technology, whether it be Mindstorm robots or 3D printers or whatever technology, growing cobwebs in the corner, or stimulating students to become passionate about discrete technology without really considering the culture in which they're using it. And so what we try to, voice crack, I'm still growing. What we try to do is we really try to, this way. We try to work within communities to rediscover their own community's culture. And we make makerspaces, and you know, if students really want to have that 3D printer in their classroom to 3D print their Vesper molecules in chemistry and make earrings out of them, which is a real project from a teacher sitting here in the crowd, that's fantastic because the student is taking the ownership and they want to do it. But some of the other projects that we really love sponsoring is, for instance, a student up in northern New Brunswick was a passionate fly fisherman. And fly tying, do you know what I mean by fly lures, fly tying, salmon lures, right? Touching on rural areas, rural subjects. The administrator of the school approached me and said, is it okay that the fly fishing things go in the makerspace next to the 3D printer? And I said, no, I didn't. And it was just such an amazing moment to allow the teachers and the principal and the students, thank you, one clap, too much, to realize that fly fishing, a material that they were so passionately involved with at home, why isn't it in the school? Why isn't it next to that 3D printer? Why not create an initiative within a makerspace where they blend familiar materials and foreign materials like the 3D printer and create new fly lures? And so that's what happens. And we have so many, you had it, we have so many stories that share that communal bonds of creating a culture. And I really think that making lends itself, I know that making lends itself, and this is all from the student's perspective, in the show and tell. And coming back to Maker Faire, it is the greatest show and tell on earth. I really believe that. And that's an important role for students to be involved with. And so if the slide was up, you would see a picture of Will, who created, now I'm going to pick on you, sir, who created, in a makerspace, a 3D designed and printed codex, or cryptex. He's a huge fan of Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. And so if you want, you can solve this. 5 dials, equivalencies, you line them up, there's a prize inside. Actually, there isn't, because the last student who solved it, he was 9, by the way, so no pressure. They took the candy. And so this is an example in where expressive use of technology allowed that student to get to the point where, oh, whoops, that's Will. I ruined the joke there. For Will to get to the point where he's running a session on Intro to Tinkercad to a group of teachers, and he is 12. But what's more is, through his passionate use of using a new material that he was interested in, it's pretty hard within the making culture where our students are being exposed to augmented reality and virtual reality and 3D printing and CNC and insert other technology here, not to be thrilled by the novelty and become a part of that technological evolution to which Will is. How are you doing with that solving there? Are you good? Yeah? But 1/5 of the way through. Love it. The math geek in me just tingled a little bit. Will recognized that he's part of a community. He went to a national science fair for a 3D printed toy. And he's now creating 3D printed cryptexes of his own design and selling them to teachers and students that he met at the Canada-wide Science Fair last year. And for him, right, it's a really neat story, because for him, he never knew that he hoped to be a part, and he's part of so many communities. He hoped to be able to share and to tell his story. When I think back to my own show and tell stories, I was lucky, this fateful day, it landed on Halloween, I was lucky to put together this Lego house, right? And so I think students are really becoming so enthralled, thank you for the giggles, I was a witch, by the way. So enthralled with this notion of showing, speaking passionately, sharing the stories, and I think Maker Faire is an absolute brilliant, excuse the pun, purple shirts, place in which students can do that. And so we are from Atlantic Canada. That map is white, by the way, because there's all snow up there. And I have the honor of working with many of the team members who are here, and I think the only reason why they work with us is because they want an 8-bit character. But the real reason why we continue to create this own culture within Brilliant Labs that we never thought the purple would really go anywhere is because we work with students, we work with teachers. And when Dale asked to kind of give the spin from a rural Atlantic Canadian perspective, one of my colleagues this morning who's from Newfoundland and Labrador, which if you're not familiar, he is literally the epitome of a Newfoundlander, encompassing all of the friendly reputation that you've always heard about. And now I was thinking about you, John, and now I lost my train of thought. What is it like to have a culture around making within rural areas? And so as an organization, we're not really that old. We've been around 6 years. We too fell into this trap. I love makerspaces, so please don't be offended by me using that word trap. In that we thought we could place technology in a makerspace, hope for the best, and everyone is going to be using code for learning these discrete technological skills. And that's great. That was the starting point. What we discovered is that students were coming in, they were actively using codes, and this happened at a moment when our founders were really trying to raise an initiative to get coding back into the classroom. And that was happening internationally. That's nothing special to our story. However, what is special is that only 6 months afterwards, our students were growing from the discrete use of single technologies into this world where they're blending expressive technologies with familiar technologies and materials that they've already become passionate about within their own communities. And so this is an example that was taken yesterday, by the way. There's already snow on the ground. Nah, it wasn't. It's the same temperature up there. This student, Will, ironically enough, the same name, there's something in that name, I think, is using a Phantom drone with to sample water from endangered wetlands for his environmental science class. The teacher is here. I'm not getting extra marks for this, for mentioning that, I hope. But he was always interested in drones, and so by using this new technology to solve a community-based problem that has already been embedded in the culture in his hometown, and that was really special. This is the fly tying example that I mentioned. And so as we grew, I kind of glanced over that one. I'm not sure why the videos are playing. This is a great story of a young girl who was born with a heart defect, and so this was an initiative brought through by the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada, where there's a red dress ceremony, and the student creators of this electronic textile, and I can go on and on about all the code that went into creating it. The moral of the story is that they created a dress in which the student, the girl who was born with the heart defect, wore at a public ceremony and danced to Taylor Swift. And there's no way that you can look at the project and not think of the way that the science, the fashion, the choreography, the art, all blurred into this assemblage of experiences for the students. And so we've moved along from this discrete technological form of making into students understanding that there was a place for their passions. There was a place where they could come together and collaborate independent of any cognitive demands, independent of any formal structures of if it was going to be on a test or not. And so through making, we realized that there were already pockets of communities within a school and for making, and the students refined that community and created their own. Through that, they developed complex solutions for problems, did you hear that? Problems that were valuable to their own communities, and redefined what community was for them. It could be their family, it could be disenfranchised youth in a rural area where are brought together for a love of storytelling through clay. And so making with Brilliant Labs and how we've been involved within a K-12 publicly funded system, we really love working with students and educators to redefine what constitutes community, materials, and the context in which that making happens. And through that, it leads to celebrating this maker culture. And what was our single most important observation in growing from placing technology into looking at making through a larger lens is this discovery that students are already inclined to become a part of that culture, and they have that culture, and now through making, it's almost as if they have a purpose that they're already recognized, or that they're recognizing, but it was already there, and we know that. So with the technical difficulties, I'm sure I'm getting close to the time limit here, but I do want to highlight 3 stories that are really narratives, and Dale, feel free to kick me off the stage here if I run over. But these are examples of cultures for making, of making, that were already present within the students' communities. And so Lisa is a teacher within a First Nations school in Atlantic Canada. And I learned today that there are many words that maybe are more familiar with you for that culture. We call First Nations Indigenous culture, or I learned this morning, Native Americans is maybe what the American educators here would refer to this group of students. And so we all know that there's a vibrant history of narratives within this culture. And so in this school, makerspace that really started in the corner of a teacher's classroom, they wanted to use storytelling through stop motion animation, and maybe the video is going to play. I don't know. No, it's not. But what was neat is that they invited a community elder in, and there was no technology involved except the voice recording of the community's elder in telling the story. And so the students were inclined to convey that, knowledge that they were learning from the elder in a way that was a little bit more expressive and valuable for them. And so they chose materials that were familiar to them, felt, and which also has a history in indigenous narratives and, a natural fiber. And they did choose to embed some LEDs, and it's cute, I'm sorry, the campfire is not showing there, but embed some LEDs and simple circuits and things like that. And a great thing happened, other than, the awesome story behind all of this. The science teacher came in and said, whoa, I can use this in my grade 6 circuits class. There's a blend of project-based learning. I see the time up here, 2 minutes. And so there's all of these great examples of highlighting cultures that are pre-existing, but are finding new promise through making and a collective coming together. This is the story of Taylor, and Taylor was enthralled with robotics. And so she was always coming down saying, what can I do? What can I make? And if the video played, you would see the M-Bot from MakeBlock using the ultrasonic sensor and code through M-Block Scratch 2.0 and delivering that green bin to our engineer here, Tree, autonomously turning around and coming back. The next year, she told us the story of her visual impairment and how she was going to her optometrist and they were unfortunately going to give her the white cane. And she had a problem with that. And she saw an opportunity to bring her love for making in school to her larger community and involve the school in that process. She remembered the robotic program that she used the last year, and she said, what if I could create a phone case that acted in a similar way as to this cane? And who 13 wants a cane? We all have cell phones. This is her speaking, Mr. Lingley. And I was like, okay, absolutely. And she never did get to a final iteration and a final prototype, but us maker educators, we know that's fine. The first proof of concept is very valuable because now Taylor is able to not only tell the story of her love for robotics and blending it into her own story of visual impairment, but she's able to go back to her community, her culture in which she is familiar, of friends who are also similarly visually impaired, and sharing what she's done and created a solution that is so meaningful to them. And we're kind of glazing over all of the curricular outcomes that are embedded in that. And finally, we have Carter and Vincent, and I'm personally connected to this. I'm also writing my master's thesis right now on making mathematics and materialism. And so Carter and Vincent were at a school who were really interested in creating a maker ed program. And so they did so with one cardboard box and 18,000 rolls of masking tape and nothing else. And so what's unique about this is that every student in the school of 370 go through 13 weeks of maker eds once a day, grade 6, grade 7, and 8, and that's a poop load of masking tape. But it evolved into activities, and what's important with this message, and now they're creating expressive examples of linking masking tape and cardboard together with the makey and code. But it grew a culture of its own within the assessment protocols of their school. The principal and the math teacher came down and realized that, wow, look at those pegs. They're even lending itself to hexagonal tessellations. I'm sorry to just geek out with you. How's that math going on that cryptex? Oh, wow, my apologies. And so we also have to consider the impacts that Maker Ed and Maker Center culture, but students just producing passionate pieces, artifacts of their own learning, what that impact has on the pedagogical logistics of an institution. Now, this program is a multidisciplinary, use whatever educational buzzword that you really want to. Students are actively involved in making things that are solutions to their own community problems within a communal space, independent of any labels. It is truly one of the most accessible areas. And so, to finish up, thank you very much. I really believe that this lends itself to workplace entry. And we have this habit of talking about this aspirational future in which our students are entering the workplace. And I don't think it's aspirational, and I don't think it's happening in the future. Our students have a set of skills derived by their own passions that are ready to be employed now. And so it's a matter of passions over conformity, because no longer are these students conforming to this list of employer-mandated skills. They're sharing their passions that they've identified, and employers, in our area are lapping those up. I think that's a regional term there. So thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of this, to tell the Brilliant Labs story.